Chapter 8. Our guardian, looking ahead in his letter of 30 June 1952, warned the Baha'is of the world of the ordeal of temporary separation from the heart and nerve center of their faith, which future unforeseeable disturbances may impose upon them. We, the Baha'is of the world, had direct and infallible guidance from the very inception of God's new revelation. From when His Holiness the Bab, closeted with Mullah Hussein, first revealed himself, until that faithful day in BE 113, 5 November 1957, when our beloved lion-hearted, self-sacrificing Commander-in-Chief, Shoghi Effendi, winged his flight to the realms above, we were never alone. First the Bab, then Baha'u'llah, followed by the Master, and finally the Guardian, were always there to guide us. I well remember how, when we had received this message, we all contemplated what it could mean. Oh, what earthquake can compare with the shock of this loss? How completely we were cut off, and how unforeseeable it was. Yes, we still had the guardianship that is destined to carry us at least another 900 years. Yes, we still had the plans of immediate action. Yes, thank God, we had those nominated hands of the cause of God, those stout-hearted generals trained at the very hand of Shoghi Effendi. Yet from BE 113 to 119, 1957 to 1963, for 6 long excruciating years, that temporary separation from the heart of our faith, as forewarned by Shoghi Effendi himself, was in truth for some of us a separation so complete as to be unimaginable. Our heart finally began to beat again in BE 119, 1963, with the formation of the first Universal House of Justice, when the true link with divine infallibility was once again re-established. Upon receipt of the wire about the passing of Shoghi Effendi, and subsequently his last messages, my wife and I vowed that the best tribute we could pay to him would be to carry out in every last detail his hopes, his pleas, and his final wishes for us. After much study, it was apparent that we were all doing all we could possibly do, yet after sincere prayer and meditation, we settled on one thing more. In addressing the American Baha'i community, the Guardian had made the appeal to the Baha'is to recapture that pioneering spirit which had sent us forth on his glorious crusade. We decided that I would go to the United States and travel the length and breadth of that land with the sole purpose of helping my precious Baha'i family there recapture this spirit. One does not have to arise and go to some foreign land to have the pioneering spirit. This is a very simple and very easily attained station. The recipe is, place the cause of God first, before everything else. That's it. One could write books about pioneering, and still it would come down to that one simple proposition. First, above all else, must come the cause of God. Now let us examine this proposition. You do not have to give up your family, nor is it necessary to give up anything else. In fact, your family, your job, and so on become more precious, since everything is based upon that very firm foundation, the cause of God. The pioneering spirit is not a place, but an attitude, a relationship with our God. I have known so-called pioneers who have gone to distant lands only to return home disillusioned and heartsick, for they did not venture forth first for the cause of God. Other pioneers, who only moved to a nearby town, have become so changed and filled with the love, wonder, and power of God, that when I converse with them, I feel as if I have conversed with heavenly angels. I left on my teaching trip, leaving my precious wife to hold the fort at home, since we had been spending every penny on our Baha'i Center or canning business. We had little money, but as Baha'u'llah says, put your whole trust and confidence in God. I used what money I could secure to buy a round-trip ticket to Seattle. When I arrived in Anchorage, the Baha'is arranged teaching work for me in that city. We had not breathed a word to any soul about our straitened financial condition, and once more had stoutly refused any aid from the United States Baha'i Fund. Despite this, a lovely Baha'i lady approached me and insisted that, due to an uncontrollable urge she could not explain, she must help me financially. God aideth whomsoever he willeth. All praise be to God, the Lord of all the worlds. I will not go into detail about this trip, as I have already recorded it elsewhere. Suffice it to say that I used her money to buy an old car and a credit card. With a heart overflowing with love of God, my wife helping from Unalaska and myself on the road, we paid a bountiful tribute to our departed guardian. From that trip alone, we learned later of quite a number of souls who recaptured that pioneering spirit and went out in the final phase of the 10-year crusade. On another teaching trip in BE 115, 1959, I traveled throughout Alaska and all of Western Canada in response to a suggestion by the Hands of the Cause of God in the Holy Land. On this trip, I gave special attention to the Indians and also to the Queen Charlotte Islands. I terminated this trip as a teacher in Geyserville, California Baha'i Summer School. The cannery continued to grow during these years, and we were able to hire all the local people who wanted to work, operating on an almost year-round basis. We had planned as far as back as the year BE 109, 1953, at that great conference in Chicago, to attend, at the completion of the crusade, the World Conference to be held in Baghdad. The location had been changed to London, but I am afraid we were very poor savers. I figured out that if we saved as much money beginning in BE 119, 1963, the year of the conference, as we did during the entire 10-year crusade, it would take us 31 years to pay for our transportation. With the North American, African, Australian, and German temples to be built, temple land to be purchased in Alaska, the Alaskan Fund, the World Center, and so on, it seems that whatever money did not go to our business or local Baha'i center, our conscience dictated should go to our beloved faith. My wife, Practical Feet, and I, Spiritual Path, no longer brooded over these matters. We decided to make the trip, and so naturally we took our 4 children and flew to London. I contacted various airlines until we found one that was willing to give us our tickets on a fly now, pay later plan. Thus, I was able to attend 3 historic conferences, the first at Chicago in BE 109, 1953. The second I managed to get to only because I wished to give something additional to the memory of our guardian, and the National Spiritual Assembly gave me an itinerary that allowed me to be in Chicago in BE 114, 1958. My heart overflows with gratitude for this blessing, and of course in BE 119, 1963, I was in London. On our first night in London, I had a strange and moving experience. When it was noon in Unalaska, it is nighttime in London. My family adjusted very well to the time change, and soon all were sound asleep in the hotel. But my body would not cooperate. In the middle of the night, I was still wide awake. As I lay upon my bed, I was seized by an urge I could not ignore, to get up, get dressed, and go across London to the Royal Hotel. Although my mind argued that this was pure folly, since all the Baha'is at the Royal Hotel would be in bed by now, my heart ruled supreme. Consequently, at 2:30 in the morning, I arrived by taxi at the hotel, and as my mind had foretold, all were sound asleep. I went into the lobby, and except for a few night lights near the desk, All was very dark and quiet. But it was a joy to me just to sit in a hotel, realizing that almost all the tenants were lovers of Baha'u'llah. One of the bellboys came up and asked me if I was one of those Baha'is, and when I assured him that I was, he asked if I could explain the very queer experience he was having. It seemed that no matter which floor he would stop at, he would see a very dignified man with a white beard and a cream-colored robes walking the halls of the hotel. I explained that there were many people from various parts of the world, and possibly he had seen different men dressed in similar fashion. I also explained that, as with myself, that the time changes could have caused some others to be quite wakeful. But he insisted that it was always the same man. He soon forgot his strange experience as we conversed, and I shared with him the life-giving waters of the cause of Baha'u'llah. He called the other bellhops over, and they both sat on the carpet at my feet. Together we tasted the wine of astonishment, and our pure and intimate conversation was only interrupted once when the beautiful spiritual lad went to the kitchen to bring back some tea and crumpets. We continued talking until the time the underground began operating, and as I left, walking down the nearly deserted streets of London towards the underground station, the young man stood in the street. For several blocks I could see him watching me go, and when I looked back, he would wave. I believe that if I had given him an invitation to come with me, he would have abandoned his position at the hotel and gone with me to the ends of the earth. Such was the tenderness and love of God that touched our hearts that night. I have often marveled at how strange and fortunate it was to have such a bounty on my very first night in London. The hotel was filled with Baha'is, yet I was called across the city for the heavenly feast of sharing the message of Baha'u'llah. While in London, I lived in heaven, and I knew not if I ate or slept. On every side was my spiritual family, and every one I came into contact with had a heart like mine, throbbing with the love of God. The high point of London for me was when Amatul Baha, with feeling, tenderness, and love nobody else could have matched, brought to us the reality of our guardian. With what compassion did we raise our voices along with those of our African brothers to help ease her heart, which she so willingly lacerated in order to bring us close to him. However, every moment of the conference was a precious gift that will be a memory cherished the rest of my life.